Hello everybody. Today we are going to discuss complex number. Now before we need to know complex number, we need to know what is an imaginary number. Well, think about this equation x squared plus 1 equals 0. Now if you try to solve this equation, what do you see? You find x squared equals -1 and then x equals square root of -1. Now it is completely impossible to calculate the square root of a negative number. So mathematicians assume square root of -1 equals I. Here I stands for imaginary. So what's the solution becomes? The solution is x equals I. Now you can use imaginary number to express square root of many negative numbers. For example, square root of -2 can be written as square root of 2 multiplied by -1, and then we can write it as square root of 2 multiplied by square root of -1, and hence it becomes root 2i. Well, let's take another example. Square root of -5. We can write it square root of 5 multiplied by -1, and then we can split it square root of 5 multiplied by square root of -1, and this becomes root 5i. So we see that we can express square root of any negative number in terms of I, okay, and I is called the imaginary number. Now what is a complex number? A complex number is a mixture of both real number and imaginary number. Well, it has the form a plus I b. Here a and b are both real numbers, okay? So a complex number has a real part and an imaginary part. The real part is a and the imaginary part is b because it is associated with I. That's why b is called the imaginary part and a is called the real part. Well, now you can ask, where do we find complex numbers? Well, when we solve quadratic equations, we find complex number most often. Let's see an example. X squared plus x plus 4 equals 0. Now this is a quadratic equation and we know the formula of quadratic equation, that is x equals minus b. Here b is 1 and then plus minus root over b square minus 4ac. Here my b is 1 and then 4ac. Here a is 1. A is the coefficient of x square, so it's 1, and c is the constant term, that is 4, okay, and then it is divided by 2a. Here a is the coefficient of x square, so that's 1. Now what it becomes? It becomes -1 plus minus root over 1 minus 16 divided by 2. We can write it -1 plus minus square root of -15 divided by 2. Now it becomes -12 plus minus square root of -15 divided by 2. We just split it, okay? So -1 divided by 2 and then plus minus square root of -15 divided by 2, okay? We split that. So here you see we find a square root of a negative number. So we can express it as -12 plus minus square root of 15 divided by 2 and I. Okay, so you see here minus half is a real number and square root of 15 by 2 is also a real number, but this number is associated with I. So this is a complex number where we have got one real part. This is the real part and this is the imaginary part. Okay, so this is a complex number. Now we are going to learn about complex conjugate. Well, if 2 plus 3i is a complex number, then its complex conjugate is 2 minus 3i. Okay, if a complex number is minus 4 plus 6i, its complex conjugate is minus 4 minus 6i. Okay, so you just need to change the middle sign, I mean the sign between two numbers. Okay, so here minus 4 plus 6i, so we just changed this plus sign, we make it minus and it becomes a complex conjugate. Okay, now here 2 plus 3i is a complex number and we just changed the plus sign to minus and 2 minus 3i becomes the complex conjugate. Now what will be the complex conjugate of minus 5 minus 2i? The complex conjugate of minus 5 minus 2i is, we don't touch the minus 5, we just change this negative sign to a positive sign and write it to I. So minus 5 minus 2i and the complex conjugate is minus 5 plus 2i. Now we are going to discuss addition of complex numbers. If we have two complex number like this, 2 plus 3i plus 4 minus 6i, we just need to add the real parts first. So in the first complex number, our real part is 2, and in the second complex number, our real part is 4. So we add these two, that's 2 plus 4, that is 6. Now we look at the imaginary part. So the imaginary part is plus 3 and minus 6. So if we add them together, it becomes minus 3. So it becomes 6 minus 3i. So please take care of the signs, okay? You are adding plus 3 with negative minus 6 and it becomes minus 3, okay? So the trick is add the real parts and then collect the imaginary parts and add them, okay? Now, how do you subtract two complex number? Let's take an example. We have a complex number 2 plus 3i and we are going to subtract from it another complex number that is 4 minus 3i. Okay, so here you see I have used a first bracket to enclose the second complex number. Why? Because I'm going to subtract it from the first complex number. So what it is, we need to, if I get rid of these brackets, it becomes 2 plus 3i, then negative 4, and both negative sign makes it plus 3i. Okay, minus and minus makes it plus. Now we do the calculations just as we did in addition. We take the real parts first, so that's 2 and negative 4, it makes minus 2. Then our imaginary part is plus 3 and plus 3, so it is plus 6 and I. Don't forget to put the I, okay? So this is the trick, how we add and subtract complex numbers. Now we are going to discuss the multiplication of complex numbers. So let's take an example. We have two complex numbers, that is 2 plus 3i multiplied by 4 minus 3i. So the multiplication procedure is pretty similar as we do in algebra. It is first we need to multiply 2 by 4, that becomes 8. Then we multiply 2 by minus 3i, so it becomes 6i. Now we multiply 3i with 4, so it becomes plus 12i, and then we multiply 3i with negative 3i, it becomes minus 9i square. Now please take care of the term I square. Okay, I square. Just see what I do. It's 8 minus 6i plus 12i, and then minus 9i square. Remember, I square equals minus 1. Okay, we assumed I equals square root of negative 1. I equals square root of negative 1, and hence I square equals minus 1. So when we find I square, we need to put minus 1 instead of that. So minus 9 and then multiplied by I square. So instead of I square, we put minus 1. So it becomes 8, and then plus 12i minus 6i makes it 6i, and then minus 9 multiplied by minus 1 makes it plus 9, and hence 9 plus 8 equals 17, and then plus 6i. Now we are going to discuss division of complex numbers. So let's take an example. Say 2 plus 3i divided by 3 minus 2i. So what we do, we write it in fraction form, that is 2 plus 3i divided by 3 minus 2i. Now what we do, we multiply the numerator and the denominator with the complex conjugate of the denominator. Just see. We write first as it is 2 plus 3i divided by 3 minus 2i. Then we extend the fraction sign and we enclose everything in brackets. And now, what is the complex conjugate of 3 minus 2i in the denominator? That is 3 plus 2i. So now multiply the numerator with this same complex number, that is 3 plus 2i. Now what is the numerator becomes? See, it is in the form a minus b multiplied by a plus b. So a minus b multiplied by a plus b equals a square minus b square. So we can write it 3 square minus 2i whole square, and the numerator becomes 2 multiplied by 3, that is 6, then 3i multiplied by 3, that is plus 9i, then 2 multiplied by 2i again, that is 4i, then 3i multiplied by 2i becomes 6i square. So you see, we have found a couple of I square. So whenever we find I square in complex numbers, we will put negative 1 instead of I square. Okay, so don't forget. Now we go here. So what did it? We find 6 plus 13i, and then 6i square. So 6i square, I can put minus 1 instead of I square. So it becomes minus 6. I just write minus 6 here. Now look at the denominator. that is 9 minus 2i whole square. So 2i whole square can be written as 4i square. So I find another i square here. So I can write here 6 and 6 cancels. So it is just 13i divided by 9 minus 4 multiplied by minus 1. Instead of I square, I put minus 1. So it becomes 13i divided by 9 and minus makes it plus. 9 plus 4. So that is 13i divided by 4. So hope you understand everything. Thank you.